sure you've probably seen a clip like this, but I'll just show 5 seconds of it for someone who has not. But there's been a lot of clips lately that have gone viral of women crying because they cannot find a man that's suitable to them in today's dating market. And really the context of this, or kind of the discussion that comes around this, is why is dating so broken in the West, and subsequently the birthright crisis that's ensuing as well.
I've been trying to meet someone, just anybody worth my time, for years. And dating apps are so awful. I don't need to explain to you how awful the dating apps are. So I've been trying to meet people in public.
But whenever this conversation comes up, like recently Tim Pool discussed this, Matt Walsh, the culprit is always feminism, social media, or male laziness. But in my opinion, the thing that doesn't come up, and I think this is actually the biggest reason, it's wealth inequality. Recently I saw a tweet comparing the 2008 TARP plan, like that bailout because of the 2008 housing crisis, and compared that to a rise in male virginity. Now, clearly these aren't perfectly correlated, but it does bring up, I think they are correlated to some degree, that society somewhere along the line, the wealth inequality shot way, way up, and as a result, so many men are priced out of the dating market. In 1980, the top 1% of society had 20% of the wealth. Now, the top 1% has 35% of the wealth. In fact, right now, this is a record, the top 10% of Americans own 93% of the stock market. These numbers are out of control. The top 1% of society is so rich, even the top 10%, but certainly the top 1% is so rich compared to the average person and the average man. The top 1% in America now owns more wealth than the entire middle class. But how would this manifest in the dating market? Think back to 1980. And this would be exacerbated by social media as well. But just think about in terms of, say, the men a woman knows. Say a woman knew 100 men around her age. They would all be much closer together in terms of income. Sure, their jobs would differ. Like one person would be a mailman. One person would be a psychiatrist. One person would be a plumber. The gap, though, these men, she wouldn't just automatically disqualify like the plumber and the mailman and just all want that psychiatrist. The gaps in the income were not as big as they are today. But today we have a winner-take-all economy, and like I mentioned, a winner-take-all stock market. And by the way, you have a lot of wealth being transferred. So if a man is just fortunate enough to be born into a wealthy family, he's going to have a major advantage in the dating market today because life has gotten so expensive. And to make matters even worse for men not born into wealth, much of the wealth today, way more than it was in prior generations, right now, so much of the wealth is held in the baby boomer generation as compared to the generation coming up now, like Gen Z and millennials. When the baby boomer generation was coming up into society, they had a far better path in terms of economics. Sure, today we have more technology, we have more Netflix and stuff, but the path to home ownership and family creation for the baby boomer generation was way, way easier. So back to the 100 men example. Let's consider that same story today. Say there's 100 men that a woman knows in her city or social circle or whatever, or just knows of through friends. Because of the wealth inequality, there's such a difference in the people that have money versus people that do not have money. Most men, the average man, will not earn enough money to meet her standard. I'm honestly not even trying to shame women for that. Like, it makes sense to try to find a man who can provide financially. And I think that is the number one metric when you're actually serious about, like, you're past that stage of dating if you have that, and you actually want a real family. You need someone that can provide a future for you. So it makes sense, or you both work together or whatever. But the average person, the median net worth of an American under the age of 35 is just $13,000. Most women, at least the women who comment on TikTok or comment on Instagram about their standards, and I think this bears out just in the gap between like the 63% of men under the age of 30 are single. Most women, $13,000 net worth probably is not going to cut it. I mean, of course, there's a bunch of exceptions, but I'm just speaking in generalities here. So of those, say, 100 men that woman knows, the men who have earned a good living at a very, very early age, or perhaps were born into wealth, these are probably the people that she's going to want. And to a woman, say she sees 3 or 4 of her friends or women that she knows who are somewhat similar to her in terms of looks or social status or whatever, say 3 or 4 women that she knows even somewhat, they actually end up with that top earning man. That'll happen. Like, there's enough rich people, enough wealthy people, wealthy enough around that some of them are going to link up. So if she sees that happen, she probably will think, I'm not that much different than her. Why would I quote unquote settle for someone who earns like a median salary of around $50,000 per year? And I'm framing this more in terms of what the woman looks for in a man. Just for this example, like there are some differences in terms of what men and women prefer. But in terms of the income piece, I mean, it certainly matters to both, but women do look at that more so than a man does, even though I do think men, just because of the economic climate where if you're earning a median salary, you have to take that into consideration. But in this video, I'm more focusing on just on the female preference. But some guy that's making $400,000 a year in tech, a doctor, a lawyer, or a dude in finance with a rich dad who got him a high-paying job, it's likely that there's at least maybe 10 to 20 of the, say, 100 men that woman knows that she could see and be like, oh, that's a potential fit. I would want to be with a person like that. But that leaves that other 80 to 90%, or 80 to 90% as well, but 80 to 90 men out of that 100, these guys are just working regular jobs, median salary jobs of, say, around $50,000 a year, or when you consider what the cost of a house is, cost of raising children, stuff like that. And I'm not saying all those men are single, but like I mentioned, a whopping 63% of men aged 18 to 29 are single today. That is such a high number. Everyone blames feminism. Everyone blames male laziness, or they blame social media. I don't hear any comment about the economics of this. It's just an economic reality that our society has more wealth inequality probably than ever in history. Certainly in the last 100 years, the wealth inequality has ballooned up. And this analysis doesn't even get into other factors in terms of female preference, such as height, physical fitness. But in terms of, I do think income ultimately, like I said, is the most important factor for a woman who's actually serious about a long-term partner, or at least the potential for income. And now this is actually where I think social media does come in. I don't think that the dating crisis and the birth rate crisis that's happening in not just America, South Korea, Japan, all over the world, really, I don't think it's social media's fault, because I think it's more wealth inequality, and then because of that, social media shows that. A man making $50,000 a year, this is not really Instagrammable. $50K a year for starters in a lot of major Western cities doesn't even cut it. You're just going to have to move. I'm from Canada, and that is essentially impossible, at least $50,000 a year, unless you have some financial support from your parents, to live in the major cities we have here of Vancouver and Toronto. Even if you pool that money, say a man makes 50 and a woman makes 50, you can't own a home in Toronto or Vancouver. You'll have to figure something else out, get help from your parents, like win the lottery, get help from a relative, or just move to a smaller city, I guess a less conventionally desirable city. But you have to do something because the real estate in Vancouver and Toronto is too expensive. So the guy that earns an average salary of around $50,000 a year, you'll have to live in a less, like I said, less desirable city. And if you live somewhere in North America, you're not going to be able to live in downtown Miami or New York or somewhere like that. And so it's likely that you as the woman in that scenario will also have to continue to work if you want to have children. And then there is the obvious issue of how are we going to raise these children? As recent estimates put the cost of a child at $250,000 from age 0 to 18. So as a woman or a man, you may start to do some math and realize that the median salary, again, this is like what the most common salary is in the US or Canada, may not cut it, or probably doesn't cut it really. You have to get creative. And there's social media, which inundates men and women with a constant stream of imagery and videos of a lifestyle that, unless you fall in that upper income bracket, that upper wealth bracket, you can't afford. $50K a year is not going to get that many likes or comments. As much as you want to say, oh, this is wholesome or whatever, I mean, sure, but I think deep down, most people would prefer to have the money, and not just for the sake of flashing on Instagram, but the number that you need to earn today just to have like the bare, your basics covered. You're not stressing about your next bills coming up. You're not stressing about how to raise that child and how to like put him into school or put that kid into sports, stuff like this. That bare minimum number is so far north of the median salary. So as I said, everybody blames social media, feminism, or male laziness / softness for the crap dating culture that we have today. And that prompted this woman in this clip, which I showed at the beginning of the video, where she shared that she had been looking for a partner for 7 years and is close at this point, I think she's in her early 30s, close to giving up all hope. But don't you think, and this is truly not a dig at this woman, don't you think she would have been approached, or at least had some men show interest in her that earned around that median salary that I've been talking? In all likelihood, yes. Like this isn't like a bad looking woman. But we have built a society, and this is not just all cultural. It's, in my opinion, more the economic reality is more of a burden here. It's not just comparing social media and keeping up with the Jones mentality. It's just an economic reality. We built a society that is extremely difficult for young people, and those young people who have full-time jobs to have enough money to thrive and live and raise a family and get married. So the point I'm making here in this video, and I'll continue to go on, of why I think some of the reasons why we have such a massive wealth inequality is I think this is the problem that we have, and our society and our political leaders have enabled this to a large degree and have created such an immoral wealth gap that now young people are basically fucked, a lot of them. Comparing 1980 to today, 2024, home prices now are 100% more expensive adjusted for inflation. But taking inflation into account, the median salary back in 1980 compared to today, it's hardly moved. It's only up a little bit. By some estimates, in terms of hourly wages, it's actually down. That's not great. Society is supposed to improve over time, and the ability for a young person to get a home in the United States, it's not improving. It's getting worse. And by the way, and this is what I want to focus on here now, debt then versus debt now, because we've bailed out the economy for fucking who? This makes me so pissed off. It's such a joke that they always say, well, we're bailing out the economy. It's for rich people. Young people are in a worse position. Who are you bailing it out for? In 1980, the US federal debt was under $1 trillion, and today it's over $30 trillion. If you just look at the US debt from 2008 to today, so let's go look at a smaller time period, it was $10 trillion roughly in 2008, and like I said, today it's over $30 trillion. That's $20 trillion of printed money, and by the way, that printed money floods the asset prices for rich people. But this has been caused due in large part, all this printing, due to the bailout of the economy in 2008, where, we just flooded the zone and we kept calling that quantitative easing. And then we kept doing that, by the way. We kept quantitative easing 1, quantitative easing 2, 3, which is just a word for money printing. And then another massive printing of money program that occurred to bail the economy out during COVID. But again, for fucking who? Just to get rich people to make sure their stocks didn't tank to zero or their real estate didn't tank down? You would think that in a world where the US has racked up over $30 trillion in debt, and I live in Canada, this is true in countries all over the world. We've gotten so addicted to printing money, lowering interest rates when things go bad. There's a quote I heard that said, we know what'll happen when aliens come now, we'll lower interest rates. But all this debt, so this is the United States, 30 trillion, that presumably the younger generation is going to have to start working towards to pay off. You would think, though, that if you did that and you're borrowing from the future, which is what debt is, you'd think that you'd have a utopian great society. Like, okay, we bailed the economy out in a massive way in 2008 and again 2020. We've incurred all this debt, but at least look at all this great stuff we have and look at all this awesome future and look how happy Gen Z and millennials are. They have affordable homes, affordable and excellent health care, maybe like a universal basic income if you're going in that much debt. Because all that debt, like if you're sitting on a home and you're a rich person and it went from $300,000 to $1.5 million, that's a wealth transfer to you. But you got to sit there and be like, oh, just work harder. Just don't drink Starbucks. That's like a universal basic income, basically like a wealth transfer that you just got gifted to a large degree because of all this free money. Not just that, but that's clearly and certainly a huge part of it And it is just a completely unfair part of it as well. But no, we have 30 trillion in debt, and the median net worth of an American under 35, $13,000. So again, I will ask, over the 40 years that our society has become utterly addicted to lower interest rates when things go bad and printing money to bail out the economy, which you really could say bail out rich people's assets, the Alan Greenspan put, and the 2008 trillions that they kept doing, the QEs, and then the trillions after COVID, so ridiculous. And is the top 1% in society, like I mentioned at the beginning, top 1%, 1980, 20% of the wealth. Today, 35. Is the top 1% in society so much more productive and has all this new productivity and they should earn, like they've earned all this excess of wealth? The answer is no. They just had to sit back, a lot of them, and watch their stock portfolios and real estate assets skyrocket throughout that time period. One of the best time periods in history to own assets. But young people, Gen Z and millennials, have been absolutely fucked by the selfish excesses and cowardly economic policies of prior generations who, in the name of bailing out the economy, chose short-term solutions which enriched rich people and like their friends and stuff like this in favor of the long-term solutions, which may have caused some short-term pain for rich people. Maybe some of their companies would have tanked to zero, some of the real estate would have gone down, but things would have sorted itself out and we wouldn't have this system where you got a bunch of rich people and the middle class is just like fighting and barely can afford homes. The housing crisis in Canada is worse than the United States. It's brutal here. But the result is that we now have a world, which again, we all get a daily reminder of through social media, that only the few haves, like that top 1 to 5, 10% of people, can fully enjoy. Regular vacations, big homes, new vehicles, regular nights out at events. These are also painfully out of reach on a regular basis for most young people, and therefore most young people in the dating market today. But if you look at social media, you'll see the top 1 to 10% of society having a great time. And you'll likely, even subconsciously, think you should be doing that as well. Why would I want to partner up with a guy making 50K? And that would be a lot of struggle. I don't want to think about my next bill payment. Say like a woman or even a man, think about this. I don't think about next bill payment. I don't want to have kids and have barely any money to give them like the activities and the good schools and the good lessons that they want. And I've heard the argument that, oh, actually in low-income countries, there's more children, so that's not an excuse. I would just say that is utterly bullshit. Nobody is going to intentionally, if you grew up in the West, put themselves into more poverty. By the way, if you're in the West, that's not going to make you attractive to the opposite sex, whether it's man or woman. Like either way, like pursuing whatever. And you're not going to move just to a different country and purposely put yourself in poverty for a higher chance at having a family and kids. I don't think anyone really is going to do that. So from a female perspective, say you meet an average guy making an average salary, average net worth, doesn't have rich parents, you probably will think to yourself, I can probably do better than this. Like, I don't want to start a life with this guy who maybe he's nice, but it's probably not what I had in mind for my ideal scenario, worrying about bills, just living paycheck to paycheck for the foreseeable future. Maybe I'll just go back onto Tinder, a dating app, and see if I can find one of the good ones. So to conclude, the point I'm trying to make here with this video is that in my opinion, the biggest problem in modern dating and why we have all these really grim stats in terms of birth rates, male loneliness, male singleness, even female loneliness, which you're seeing on these videos of these women crying, but all these stats, 63% of men under the age of 30 are single. I think the biggest problem is wealth inequality. We have a winner-take-all society where a few men get ahead or have wealthy parents or whatever, and then thanks to social media, you'll find these people, and it can appear too that there's more of these people than there actually are. So if you're a woman looking for a man, you're going to want one of these guys who's way above the average. And while I do think feminism and many men just being lazy and not striving for excellence and social media in general are contributing factors to why dating and family formulation is statistically getting worse, I think the biggest factor by far is the massive amount of wealth inequality we've created in society. And I think it's unethical and immoral. And I think as a society, we have to fix this and find a way for the middle class to come back and the middle class to be something we strive to build and not just have a society that's great for the haves or the people that got rich or the people that have rich parents or whatever. So I think we really have to talk more about how badly, and I'm making this like hypothesis, how badly we got fucked, young people, by those stupid economic policies where rich people were getting bailed out. And it's not the only reason there's wealth inequality. Some wealth inequality is actually good. Like the people that produce the most in society should be rewarded. I'm totally fine with that, and I want that. I'll fight for that, like in way I can, videos, I guess, but that's good. It's not good when you have artificial stuff. Some of this stuff, though, globalism, just the way that technology companies are kind of winner take all, that's harder to regulate. But the intervention for the central banks flooding the zone with money, I think is immoral. I think has been brutal, and it's not good enough to just bail out rich people. But I've been saying that on and on this video anyway. Thanks for watching this video. I think the point I'm trying to make is that wealth inequality is the biggest problem in terms of dating right now. I hope that more people online, or more people in general in the world start talking about this. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.